So what would you say on that? Like, slow mo from the side. Like I like looking at that and being like, well, he was just a little early.
Yeah, he was early and he like swung over it. Like he wasn't even on the same plane as that pitch. Like it was like this.
Yeah. I mean, granted, it's not a good pitch to swing at. We're
Right.
not saying
Sure.
that by any
Sure.
means. That is not a good pitch to swing at. But if he were to hit it, like if he would, what adjustment would he have to make in order for him to actually be able to hit it? Well, he was early and he wasn't
He
on
was
the same
early and
plane.
he wasn't on the best plane to be able to actually run into that pitch, even if he hadn't have been early.
Right. I mean, and two, like I like to think about like, okay, what other ways could he have bought himself more time to allow the pitch to get a little bit further in? And or because that pitch was so low to the ground, could he have actually gone out and moved, allowed his weight to shift even more forward and take his center, to go out and get it? Or could he have had more side bend and more forward lean with the torso and more reach so that he can extend out? Because then that ball is actually easier to hit when it's actually further out in front of the plate there. So, I mean, to me, once you can identify those things of like, okay, what could they have done differently? Then when you feed them other pitches or you talk and you do a debrief with them and you show them video like that, then they can go experiment, explore, and try those things out and see what works for them and what doesn't.
Yep.
So, I mean, for me, that's how I would utilize like that side angle slow motion.
That speaks to, what I think is, and I know I'm a broken record on this, that speaks to the issue with prescriptive technical model teaching of the swing. When you do that, when you are teaching a specific swing, this is the correct way. And if this is in podcast audio form, I am holding up air quotes right now when I say that. If this is the correct way, air quotes, to swing, that is by definition restrictive and confining. And it is sending the message to the athlete, to the hitter, that this is the way that you were supposed to do this, regardless of what is placed in front of you, regardless of what the pitch is asking you to do or what the previous context was. And it by definition limits exactly the things that you were mentioning, of possibly being able to go out and get it more or ride your weight out further, maybe even out on your front foot, which is a no-no in terms of the way that we teach hitting nowadays.
Or just even old school. I mean, for me, that's old school because that's what I was learning when I was coming up.
Yeah.
Coaches were so against that.
But like, you are taking away those potential
movement solutions,
or to use a ecological dynamics phrase, action capabilities. You are limiting that potential by saying this is the way that you swing. Well, what if you need something else that is outside of these rules that you're placing on me that I am supposed to stick within? And to me, that's why you see so many hitters that can only hit pitches in the middle of the plate. Because they never explore to try to expand that dexterity that you mentioned earlier to be able to actually get to those different pitches because they're so worried about executing this specific movement pattern. I even hate the word pattern. It sucks.
I agree. I agree with
this
that.
specific movement pattern that limits you from being able to get to more pitches other than just down the middle. So then what does that lead to? Then it leads to, and it comes out of, it's a circular causation, in my opinion. This whole swing at pitches that you can hit down the middle and don't wait for pitchers to make a quote unquote mistake. And I'm doing air quotes again.
Or take 3-0.
Yeah. You just have to wait for the pitcher to make a mistake. Wait for the pitcher to make a mistake. Which is why I've said this multiple times on social media. Why don't we try to create mistakes with how we train? Why don't we try to create the ability to make pitchers pitches or no longer pitchers because we are exploring all these different action capabilities to be able to then deploy on these different pitches. Then maybe we don't have to limit ourselves to just hitting pitches down the middle. That ball was smoked. Ground rule double. That was a perfect example
102.
right there.
Yeah.
That was a perfect example right there. That was like middle in, thigh high, like, and yeah, he smoked it on that pitch. And he probably thinks it's because of his swing, but it was because it's in the perfect place that he trains for on a regular basis, and he's more attuned to that pitch. And
Or he
it's
was just
easier-
fully in the moment, you
Yeah.
know, like too, and fully attuned, adaptable, and dexterous there. And this is the other thing too, though, with when it comes to when we're talking about like attuned, adaptable, dexterous from an ecological dynamics approach, you're not like always the same person. From moment to moment, you're changing. Like your psychological state changes from moment to moment. Your action capabilities change from moment to moment. And so we're hoping, though, that through all the different training, that training environment and past experience playing the game that you have, that you'll better be able to get into those states that allow you to succeed. And so for me, that's kind of why I say, like, you know, he was attuned, adaptable, and dexterous in that moment.
But that is based on the experiential level that you have with those moments, right? So
In a way, yes. I
it
mean,
is
because
going to, well, I mean, it's going to coincide with how often you found yourself in this type of situation, right?
Well, where you're going with it, or where I'm going to take where you were going with it, is what it'll then show is, like, if you're able to do it more consistently, then you're going to have more consistent results. But just in the way that you can take one person who doesn't have a ton of track record of history of being performing at a high level, and you stick them in a high level moment, and then they actually perform. That's not based upon their past experience. That's based on the fact that everything in that situation, whether it's something that a coach said, maybe it's, you know, something else too that they were listening to throughout the day, they watched an inspirational video, somebody said a good word to them, whatever, and then they, you know, it combines with that moment when they go up to the plate and they, you know, they hit a pitch that, you know, they have no business, or, you know, get a hit, game-winning hit off of a pitcher they have no business doing that against. That to me just shows that for that moment, they were in such a state that they were able to be attuned, adaptable, dexterous.
So you're talking about flow, like the idea of like a flow state more so than, oh, I've experienced hitting that pitch in practice, so it's easier for me to do it in competition.
Well, I mean, it's both, right? Like, so what I'm saying is that because, like, what I like about an ecological approach is that we talk about complexity. Like, everything is a multifactorial event, right? So it's not taking away from what you're saying at all. It's just saying that when we assess, like, why something happens, it's not always because of their past experience.
Right.
That is a component of it, but it's not necessarily a prerequisite for it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because there's all kinds of things that go into why we have the capability to do the things that we do from a physicality standpoint, whether it's athletic or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's back to your previous podcast. You know, maybe he ate Cheerios this morning or whatever. You know, like it all plays in, and it's more on the perceptions of the athlete and how they perceive it. But I mean, that doesn't mean that you can do everything. You do have to understand, like, how the system adapts, you know, perceptually. And to your point that you were making earlier, we want them to be able to do that more often and more frequently, not just one time. Like, you know, we're watching the movie Miracle and we just have to beat the Russians one time, you know? So that's why these things matter, and actually understanding these principles and trying to implement them more frequently and more often. It's so that the athletes can perform at a high level more frequently and more often.